Before we begin, of course, all of us here on this call are able to gather to learn Torah, and that's a wonderful thing. But there are many people out there who can't do that. Many people who are sick, who are going through struggles that we can't even imagine. Perhaps and probably people on this call are struggling in ways that we can't imagine, but just able to get on the call. And we really want to be able to just open with a moment of prayer to be able to daven for Refuah Shlema. We'll do a Mishaberach. I encourage everybody right now, as Raburi is going to lead us with the Mishaberach, but I encourage everyone right now, use the chat function on Zoom and put in names of people that we need to say Mishaberach for. So I'm sure everyone here knows of people, whether it's because of COVID-19 or other things, just start putting them into the chat. So all of us collectively as a community could be davening for all of them. It's not only people who are directly sick, it's all of the healthcare workers who are literally on the front line every day, putting themselves at risk of getting sick themselves in order to help other people. So let's have in mind all the healthcare workers and all of the cholim and cholot, all of those who are sick, as Rav Uri opens up our program with the Mishaberach for cholim.
Let's fill the room, the Zoom room, with all of these names and our voices, and fill it with the angels that we hope and pray join us in a tefillah for Refuah Shlema. Mishaberach Avotenu Abraham, Yitzhak, Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, Uyevarech, V'yirapeh, Et hacholim v'et hacholot. May Hashem bring strength and healing to all of those that we have in mind, to our loved ones and friends. Bavur shekol kal mitpalim bavuram. On behalf of this holy Zoom congregation's tefillot. Ischazeh HaKadosh Baruch Hu yimaleh rachamim alayhem. Hashem should have mercy on them. Lachlimam lapotam lachzikam lachyotam, to grant them the healing and the strength that they need. Vishlach lahem refuah shlema min hashamayim, to send a speedy healing from heaven. L'kol rehem u'kol gedem toch shar cholei Yisrael. Refuat HaNefesh, Refuat HaGuf, a renewal of spirit and a renewal of body. Hashta Bagala Ubizman Kariv Vinomar. Amen. Amen.
Okay. Hi, everybody. We're going to begin our program, and we're going to begin with Rabbi Shmuel Hertzfeld. And if you've been to this program before, you know that it's basically each of us speaks for about 10 minutes. And I think I'm going to try to put up a timer on the screen so that we can see exactly how long it's going for. But Rabbi Herzfeld will kick us off with a 10-minute class entitled Shopping for Pesach in a Time of Extenuating Circumstances.
Okay, good evening, everybody, and thank you to Rabbi Eitan and Rabbi Nissen for hosting, and to Rabbi Uri for leading us in prayer, and of course, I thank my colleague Maharat Ruth. I don't think if any of us had 2 months ago and imagined that Pesach was going to look like this. This is not, the whole year I look forward to Pesach, and this is not what I imagined. But I want to encourage everybody to have a different mindset. Don't think of it as that we're losing so much of what we celebrated Pesach in previous years. Let's not think about it like that. Let's think about it that if we're obeying these guidelines, which we should very carefully, the social public health policy guidelines, that we're really doing every single second that we're involved in following these public health guidelines, what we're doing is fulfilling the mitzvah of saving a life. And so we're adding mitzvos to our Pesach this year. We're not losing mitzvos, we're adding mitzvos. We're adding the mitzvos of saving lives. In that context, I wanted to share some guidelines that are just me speaking personally. I can't speak for the other rabbis on this Zoom call. I have the greatest respect for them. I can't speak even for my colleague Maharat Ruth, who I'm honored to serve with in Olav Shalom. I can only speak for myself. But for myself, I wanted to share the following guidelines. That in Judaism, we're so, by the way, Rabbi Eitan, I can't see the timer, so you just
No, I couldn't, just trust me. I'll tell you when to stop, okay?
Okay, give me a minute notice. So in Judaism, as it relates to law, we are people of the law. But when it comes to law, there is a concept called Shas Hadchak, which is basically means extenuating circumstances. And when there are extenuating circumstances, we have different halachos, we have different laws, and the same laws do not apply. And if there was ever a time in our history where there were extenuating circumstances, it is the time we are living in now. And therefore, if there was ever a time where we should rely upon lenient positions, this is the time to do so. That generally speaking, when it comes to Pesach, we always try to push ourselves to follow more stringent positions, because it's the concept. That's in many ways what the holiday has been about my whole life, how we can find more and more stringencies in order to connect to the holiday of scourging our house of chametz. But this year, we should not really try to embrace those stringencies, because those stringencies could actually cause us to be taking away from the idea of the mitzvah of saving a life. And it's not only about whether or not we have something or we just do one stop at the supermarket. It has to do with the fact that when we push ourselves for stringencies, we're really contributing to the anxieties that many of us are already facing in this period. And those anxiety and concern is healthy, but anxiety can become very unhealthy. It can become really dangerous for certain people. So by embracing stringencies, we could be creating a cycle where, God forbid, we lead us to increasing our anxiety when that's not healthy and it's actually against the halachic position. So obviously, I heard it from the mayor of DC directly. I'm sure you've heard it from your elected officials. We should be limiting our trips, limiting the times we go out to the supermarket. The mayor of DC said when people go shopping, they should shop for 2 weeks. And so if we're going to go to the kosher store, and we should try and buy as many things as possible, and we should limit it to that time. But it's often the case not possible. I don't know, like if you're like me, but before this whole thing happened, I found that either I or somebody from my household was in the supermarket every single day. We always forget things at the store. And so what do we do in a situation where we've forgotten things, where on our one trip to Shalom's or Mati's or wherever we go, we somehow forgot to get something. So what do we do then? Can we rely on certain leniencies? And I would say that this year, the leniencies are the mitzvah to rely upon, so that we don't go out to the store again, to prevent us from going out a second time shopping, or even to prevent a delivery person from making a delivery, because that is dangerous. Every single time that we bring something into our home or we interact in that way, it's a risk. And so what I'm going to share with you are some guidelines that I think are things that we should rely upon for this year only. Generally speaking, I would not speak like this, but I think first of all, like in general, we often line our cabinets, we get tin foil, we do all those things. Marat Ruth can be speaking about the koshering angle, but from my perspective, I just want to share every single thing in our kitchen can easily be koshered, and we would take the most lenient approach in those areas. So we shouldn't be rushing out to buy new pots or pans or goods or all that sort of stuff. Now, I know I'm speaking a little bit in generalities because we only have 10 minutes, but people can contact me or text me or ask me questions afterwards. I'm going to be available at all times to answer any questions in this next week. But it's certainly when it comes to to koshering things or buying things for our kitchen, we should not be doing that. We shouldn't be making the extra trip to a store. Secondly, when it comes to our chametz that we sell, we should not be throwing out anything this year, nothing. Everything can be sold. All the chametz products in our homes, we can sell. Sometimes people are strict and they say, well, we don't want to sell actual chametz or actual bread products. That quote unquote stringency this year is actually a leniency because it's causing us to get rid of food and then go to the store again. And that is an extra risk when it comes to saving a life. And that is something that I strongly discourage. Everybody should not be. The minimum amount of what we should destroy are the 10 pieces of bread that we put out the night before Pesach, and that's it. We should not waste any food or burn it or destroy it or give it away. Everything should be kept. All the chametz should be kept in a closet in our house till the end of Pesach. Now, what about if you have certain things in your closet which don't have a kosher for Passover label on them? And it's a choice between using those things or going back to the making a second trip to the store. And I feel very strongly that under those circumstances, we can use our eyes and read the ingredients. And if you don't know what the ingredients are, you can always text me if you don't understand them. But certainly when it comes to simple ingredients like all butter, like plain butter, or cottage cheese, or yogurt, or all juices, or soft drinks, even if they don't have a kosher for Passover label, if you look at the ingredients and they don't list the 5 major ingredients of wheat, barley, spelt, oat, and rye, then if it's a choice between eating that or going to the store a second time, I strongly discourage people from going to the store a second time or having the risk of somebody else bringing it. That is dangerous. People are dying because they're interacting with the world. And we have to, not only for ourselves, not take the risk, but we also have to model behavior for every single person who comes into contact with us. And that is the type of thing we should not be going to the store if we run out of an ingredient which we have in our house, which is not kosher, which does not have the kosher for Passover label. And so that refers, basic ingredients, it's clear, like all meat, all chicken or eggs, all that stuff. As long as the ingredients don't list those 5 ingredients of wheat, barley, oat, spelt, and rye, it's okay to eat them for Pesach. So if you have, for example, canned fruit or frozen fruit or vegetables, even though they don't have the kosher for Passover symbol, I would eat them in my house on Pesach. I would absolutely eat them. I would eat the butter, even though it doesn't have kosher for Passover label on it under these circumstances in this year, because these are extenuating circumstances. Now, what about, I know some people are going to ask about kitniot. Kitniot is something which is a very strong custom for the Jewish people, is going back to Ashkenaz, to Germany in the Middle Ages, of not eating certain foods because of their connection to chametz. And the Ramah himself lists certain foods that were explicitly listed in the 16th century in the Ramah, like beans and chickpeas and rice, as products that one should not eat on Pesach. But there's a certain, and I don't think that we should do away with that custom. That is a strong custom, and ideally we should not do away with that practice. However, there are certain leniencies which were built into that custom, which we adopted upon ourselves as stringencies not to do. So, for example, the kitniot became extended in areas which was not part of the original decree. And so it became extended to certain things like green beans. Why did green beans become prohibited? Because beans were prohibited, so therefore green beans. But there was no basis for that custom. And that custom became found I'm going to get to questions in one moment. I'll answer a question, but it also became accepted in certain things like oils, which are also not necessarily part of the original decree. Also became accepted to adopt that custom in things like corn syrup, which was changed from corn itself is not part of the original decree. They didn't have corn in the 16th century Europe, the corn that we have. And then it became turned into corn syrup. So this becomes decrees upon decrees upon decrees. And if it's a choice, again, between going to the store a second time or eating something which was just a prohibition upon us as a decree upon a decree upon a decree, that is something that I very, very strongly discourage. And in that context, I also want to say that the practice of kitniot does not apply, the custom of kitniot does not apply to young children or to the sick. And in this day and age, where they're saying that anybody who's in a dangerous demographic is really at risk. So by putting yourself at risk to go to the store and get something when you could eat something which is kitniot in your house, you're actually violating Jewish law. You're actually, in my opinion, violating Jewish law, because the primary spiritual obligation in these days, in this time, in this period in our life, is to protect our health. That is our primary spiritual obligation. And so that is basically the nutshell of what I wanted to say in a short and sweet. I don't know. Eitan's not sending me the time, so I don't know how much time I have left.
No, you have 1 minute.
Okay, so I'm happy to answer a quick question, or you could text me or email me afterwards, and I'll address more specific questions if people want to. I don't know if people are sending questions. Is anybody sending a question? Rabbi Eitan, you could ask me what if people sent.
You had one question. Does that mean that kitniot, Diet Coke with corn syrup, or rice cakes, for example, are okay to eat this year? Or things like regular brands of orange juice would be okay that aren't kosher for Passover?
Okay, so certainly with respect to orange juice, if you look at the orange juice, even if it doesn't say kosher for Pesach, it's certainly okay to drink it as long as you don't have any other ingredients. And when it comes to corn syrup, I certainly feel like corn syrup is a decree upon a decree upon a decree. And the vinegars are also okay. Most vinegars today, I see somebody's asking about vinegars. Vinegars are not made from the 5 grains. Most vinegars in America today are not made from the wheat, barley, spelt, oat, and rye. So as a baseline, if you know that those are not part of what's making up that vinegar, those vinegars are okay. People can ask me specific questions. The rice, I encourage people not to eat the rice because rice is part of the original decree of kitniot. And again, I'm not encouraging people to go out and eat kitniot. I'm saying if it's a choice between where you didn't get all your shopping done, if it's a choice between going to the store a second time or eating something in your home, which is a custom not to eat, for sure you should eat the food in your home and do not go the second time to the store. There is a strong custom. Somebody asked about peanut butter. Peanut butter is part of the thing that there's been a very strong custom for a long time not to eat the peanut butter. So I discourage that, except if the alternative is going to the store a second time. If the alternative is going to the second store, eat the peanut butter so that you're not going to a second store. It is very dangerous. There's a reason why we're not in shul. The reason why we're not in shul is because it's dangerous to our lives to go to places. And so therefore, if we're not going to go to shul for weeks at a time, of course we shouldn't, we should not be strict in areas of customs. But yes, you can buy milk and eggs, and it's not a problem. It does not have to be kosher for Pesach.
Okay. Thank you, Rabbi Herzl. We're going to move on now to Maharat Ruth Friedman, who's going to, her class is titled Koshering Minimal Requirements.
Okay, hi everyone. It's wonderful to be here with all of you. And so again, Rav Eitan, you will give me alerts about the time. Okay, excellent, great. So what I wanted to do is just to run through the very basic overview of cleaning and kosher for Pesach, while acknowledging that first and foremost, like Rabbi Herzl said, this is a year where we need to go easy on ourselves and make sure that we're not pushing ourselves beyond the limits of what can safely be expected of us. And also really acknowledging that in many ways, this is a year of lowered expectations. This is a year where we are not going to go all out and do everything that we've done in past years. This is a year where we have to get used to and adjust to the fact that, you know, our house will be like clean and it might be ready for Pesach. Clean and ready for Pesach are not necessarily the same things. And just like our grocery shopping is going to be altered this year, it's okay if our cleaning is altered this year as well. And I think that part of just another word of background part of what we've sought to do as a Beltway Vaad with our guidelines for cleaning every year is to really send the message that cleaning for Pesach is not the same thing as spring cleaning. It is not designed to torture us for a whole month and to drive ourselves crazy. The purpose of cleaning for Pesach is to get rid of or at least put away the obvious chametz in your home and in your property. So first of all, I'm sure no one can go to work and clean out their office or at least get rid of any chametz. So that's fine, just include it in what you're selling. The next thing, just a quick word before we get to the kitchen, I just wanted to visualize the rest of your home with a car. If you have a car, just look through any chametz, just get rid of it. If it's still good, depending on definition of still good, just put it away. Like Rabbi Herzfeld said, this is not the year to be throwing out food, but you don't have to be vacuuming in every nook and cranny. It's not about cleaning in the objective sense of getting rid of every crumb. It is about removing chametz from your presence and from your abode. So that's really it with a car. It's something you can do in 4 minutes. And then with regard to everything in your home except for your kitchen, once again, you are looking for chametz. So just look through. If you happen, I don't know, to keep a stash of something somewhere, then just please put it away and that's it, you're done. You do not have to vacuum, you do not have to do any of that, just remove the chametz. Then you get to the kitchen. Now, I wanted to acknowledge that really I think that we're talking about 2 streams, or at least one spectrum, and that we've really got folks at different ends of the spectrum. On one end of the spectrum are people who did not expect to be staying home this year and are finding themselves staying home and possibly making Pesach for the first time and saying, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do, but who are otherwise capable of doing some cleaning. And then there are those who, God forbid, Chalila, are ill or not feeling well, or are home alone when they didn't expect to be, and don't really have the physical strength or the wherewithal to clean. So these are 2 separate conversations, and I am mindful of that. And so within anything that I'm going to say, please know that you should always ask your LOR, your local Orthodox rabbi, or Maharat, wherever, clergy, LOC, and please just never do anything that you feel is not within your physical capabilities of doing, or that you feel like you're not totally sure. So what my goal tonight in the next 6 minutes is just to debunk a little bit of the standards we may have historically held ourselves to or thought we need to hold ourselves to. But again, remembering, please ask questions if there's something you feel that you're not sure you're gonna be able to do it. It is fine. We will work with you. We will find a way to work with whatever limitations you have. I also just wanted to add that the goal of this is to only describe things you can do yourself, and not anything that requires bringing anyone from outside, whether it's a cleaning person or a service or what have you, into your home in order to do it for you, because of course that is something that is not safe for you to be doing at this time. And so whatever you need for yourself is something that's within your own limitations. So the kitchen, let's first do the basic kitchen appliances. I want to start with the fridge, and Rabbi Herzfeld mentioned the word liner. Really, you don't need a liner for anything. There's nothing in your kitchen that you actually really do need a liner for. Your fridge, you should be clean. Now, if you aren't able to clean your fridge, or cleaning it means taking it apart or anything that you're unable to do, put away your chametz. If you have 2 fridges, put it in the downstairs fridge. What I do is I put, the sauces and all those things that I like to keep from year to year and I don't want to throw out, in a plastic bag, and I just put it in the drawers. I put it in a certain place, and therefore I know that that's the chametz. I'm not even going to reach for it. That is really all that you have to do. So if you are able to wipe it down and clean it thoroughly, terrific. If you are not, please don't worry, just bag up your chametz. Just an important part of keeping Pesach is not eating chametz, but also not seeing it in your home. And so that is not equated with throwing it out. It just means putting it in a place you're not going to be able to visualize it. So that's your fridge. Stovetop also, I don't believe stovetops actually need to be covered. Now, there's of course a wide range. There's gas, there's electric, there's the, I forget what it's called, the flat glass ones that I know will crack if you try to clean it or cover it or anything. But really in all these cases, what you need to do is clean your stovetop thoroughly. There should not be visible pieces of food anywhere. And then run your burners. Now I've seen everything from, I don't know, 5 minutes to an hour. I think if you run your burners on the top high heat, it shouldn't be more than about 5 minutes or so. I know that if I do that, the knobs start to actually get hot and melt a little bit, which of course to me means that's a temperature at which it's not safe. And I also believe that if it's running at full heat, all of them, you really are burning off any remnant of anything that is chametz that could possibly be on there. And another important practice to remember is if you're doing that and you don't want to cover your stovetops, that's completely fine. Just if while you're cooking for Pesach, something falls on your stovetop, throw it out. Don't eat it, don't put it back in the pot, because maybe whatever it touched something, just throw it out. That's all you have to do. The stovetop should not take more than, I don't know, half an hour in order to clean it thoroughly and run it. Your oven, hopefully you have a self-cleaning oven, in which case just run it on a self-clean cycle. You do not need to wait 24 hours first, run it on self-clean, and that's it. Although of course, please remember that self-clean itself can be a little bit dangerous. And so you really please keep a close eye on it. If not, just remove any obvious parts of chametz and run it on the highest temperature for an hour. Therefore, you're done with your oven. Goodbye. That's the stove and oven. Countertops, regardless, first of all, if you can just clean them thoroughly, if you can, wipe them down with, whatever sprays and all that, really make sure that they're completely clean. If it is safe for you to do so, pour boiling water on top of them to kosher them. If it is not safe for you to do that, maybe you don't have the ability to move or you're worried about burning yourself, dropping the water, then please just make sure they are completely cleaned. And once again, if on Pesach you drop any hot food onto your countertop, just throw it out, don't eat it, or don't put it back in the pot. Your sink, boil it, just clean it thoroughly, and then pour boiling water over it. That would be better if you are able to. That to me is more important than the countertops, to be able to pour boiling water over it. And hopefully you can do that for your sink racks as well if you have sink racks. I also think it's nice to make sure to run the garbage disposal ahead of time, keep it on for a minute or two, maybe throw a little soap down there just to try to clean it out as well. So that is, and really the goal of this is that it shouldn't take long, and this is something that you can do just in an evening if you need to. The microwave is often the last thing to get clean because you want to use it until the last minute. So for that, if it has a glass plate and it's okay, it won't hamper your ability to use the microwave if you remove it. It's preferable to just remove that glass plate for the duration of Pesach, set it aside somewhere. Make sure the microwave is clean, and then microwave a paper cup full of water for about, I would say, 7 to 10 minutes. Just keep an eye on it to make sure that the cup doesn't burn a little bit. That happened to me one year. So you just want to be careful about that. I see a question. I know there is a point about self-cleaning ovens. I agree. Like I said, please, if you're going to use self-clean, keep an eye on it. I know some people recommend putting the grates from the stovetop in the oven. I'm really not comfortable telling anyone to put anything that is not part of the oven in the oven for self-clean because it already is very dangerous. Do we need to cover the stovetop with foil after cleaning it? I really don't think so. I think if it's fully cleaned and you run the burners for 5 to 10 minutes, then you don't. But like I said, just throw anything out that falls down. If the microwave needs the plate, just wash it very, very thoroughly and don't let any food touch the plate during the process of microwaving. And if it does, throw it out. Am I missing anything? Okay, I know I have 1 minute. Dishwashers. I always forget dishwashers because I don't really like dishwashers very much. You should really be able to clean out the dishwasher thoroughly. And that includes the drain also, which in my opinion is the grossest part of a kitchen. So please clean it out very, very thoroughly, the drain as well. Run it with soap on the strongest cycle. And then, I know there are many, many opinions on dishwashers. And as Rabbi Herzfeld said, we all bounce around. I'm not prescribing anything for everybody, but our opinion is then you can use it. I'm probably out of time. Is that correct, Rabbi Cooper?
Yep, just about. Maybe.
Okay. Great. I hope that was
okay. Thank you, Maharat Ruth Friedman. We are going to now transition from preparing for Pesach, which was really the topic of these first two sessions, to actually conducting a Seder. We're going to start with Rabbi Uri Topolaski, who's going to lead us with a session about conducting a Seder with just your household.
Okay, shalom everybody. Rabbi Cooper, are we going to try to share a screen here?
You could share your own screen if you want, because you're one of the hosts.
Okay, well, I'm not set up to do that. Are you capable of sharing
I can share the screen for you, no problem.
Yeah, that'd be great. So I'm going to shift gears dramatically, and many thanks to my colleagues for their beautiful thoughts on preparing for Pesach, and especially in this time. I wanted to think a little bit about one line in the Haggadah, which for me strikes me very different this year. And that is, we say at the very beginning of Magid, Halach Ma'anya, we talk about this bread of affliction, of oppression, and then we say to everybody, Kol dichvin yete ve'echol. Anybody who's hungry, come in and eat. And let's be honest, most years we don't really mean it. But this year, we definitely don't mean it. Nobody wants anybody to come in their house and eat. And I don't know if anybody's had this experience before, but we have a tradition in our family that we open the door and we shout it out real loud. Anybody who's hungry, come and eat. And one year, of course, this happened in Yerushalayim. My family was all gathered in the old city in Yerushalayim. And we had Seder there. And we opened up the door to shout, Halach ma'anya da'achlu avtana ba'ara d'mitzrayim kol dichvin yeteh ve'echol. If anybody's hungry, come and eat. And 4 kids turned around on the sidewalk and said, we've been dying to come for Seder. And they walked right in the door and joined us for Seder, 4 college students. Just wild. I don't know if anybody's ever had such an experience, but it was so beautiful that we got to actually invite people and have them walk in the door. Shkoyach, Rabbi Cooper, perfect. You'll follow me as I go through the sources quickly. So, but this year, let's be honest, we don't want anybody to come in and eat with us. Some of us are going to be having Seder all by ourselves. Some of us, a couple. Some of us, a family. My family of 6, we're very blessed to be all together. But we usually are 25, 27, 29 people for Seder. In my family, we're not going to be together. The second night, we're usually 70 or so, 80 or so at the shul. And I know in a minute, Rabbi Antin is going to talk about what it is to create Seder by yourself. But I'm focusing just on the question. We don't really want anyone to come in. So how do we make relevance? How do we make meaning out of this line of the Haggadah? And I want to share 3, maybe 4 approaches about how we can think about it. So let's look at Rabbi Sachs. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs in his Haggadah has a very powerful statement here. Rabbi Cooper, just slide up the page a little bit. And he says, this is a strange invitation. This is the bread of oppression. Our ancestors ate in the land of Egypt. Let all who are hungry come and eat. What hospitality is it to offer the hungry the taste of suffering? I'm like, it's like, oh, I burnt the pasta. It's disgusting. Who wants it? Right? I'm having cardboard for dinner. Does anybody want it? Why would you invite anybody in? What kind of hospitality is it? It's a strange invitation, says Rabbi Sachs. In fact, though, this is a profound insight into the nature of slavery and freedom. As noted, matzah represents 2 things. It is the food of slaves and also the bread eaten by the Israelites as they left Egypt in liberty. What transforms the bread of oppression into the bread of freedom is the willingness to share it with others. And this year, I would say, if you're reading it like Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, then we aren't able actually to transform lechem oni, the bread of oppression, into the true bread of freedom. And that's okay. That's yachatz. That's the brokenness. That's recognizing that this year we're feeling a loss. And even though I agree wholeheartedly with Rabbi Hertzfeld that we should also recognize that this year we're fulfilling other mitzvot of pikuach nefesh and saving lives, and that's amazing. But there is not the ability to transform this lechem oni in a different kind of way in this context. And we should recognize that. And in some ways, it helps us perhaps experience the slavery, experience what it feels like to be alone, to not have what we always want to have. And if we move down, Rabbi Cooper, there's a powerful piece in Haggadah called Escape Velocity by Stanley Lebovic. It's a profound Haggadah, a very large and beautiful Haggadah that really tries to personalize the story. And he offers the following take on this line. In an attempt to provide verbal expression for the existential loneliness brought on by the Yachatz devastation, the brokenness of Yachatz, we recite the Aramaic passage, Halach Ma'anya. In it, we attempt to compensate for our loneliness by issuing an invitation to any and all need. This innocent gesture, although understandable, actually serves to compound our sense of loss. It is a desperate move, ill-timed. If you wanted to invite people, friends, you should have done that 2 weeks ago. Kiddush has already been made. Karpas has already been dipped. If we are sincere in our intentions, we should have made the proper invitations well before the meal. Therefore, we must understand this invitation on another level. Okay, so understand what he's saying. Halach Ma'anya is not about inviting other people in. It's something about ourselves, actually. As we're about to celebrate our freedom in grand style with regal leaning in cup after cup of fine red wine, we must acknowledge a sad truth. We are not really free. We are not yet home. Our exodus from Egypt has landed up in a prolonged exile of unimaginable horrors. And what he's saying here is that the recognition of halach ma'anya is, wait a minute, I am not free. I am hungry. I am hungry for ge'ulah. I'm hungry for, where am I? It's the wake-up call that actually we can't eat the Korban Pesach. We're not where we ultimately want to be. And therefore, perhaps halach ma'anya gives us an opportunity, again, to think differently about this custom. Let's skip down to the next text, Rabbi Cooper, and show you one more perspective, and then to wrap it up. This is Rabbi Saban, Sephardi rabbi, Tunisia. And he reminds us of the custom that some have, especially in Sephardic communities, and we have a family that does this every year at our Seder, that carry the Seder plate over their heads and circle it over their heads. And when he says, who is ever hungry, let him come and eat, whoever's in need, lest he say this with his lips only and not his heart, the act of passing around the plate strengthens his heart to remember that in the future, he may need to celebrate Pesach in another's home. What does that mean? It means this year I have my home. Thank God, I'm blessed. You know, we're struggling. It's a very different year. But I still have a place to be, perhaps, not everybody. But when I pass the Seder plate actually in a circular motion, the idea is it's a circle. This year I have this, but next year maybe I won't. Maybe I won't even have this. And it's a recognition of what I have, be grateful, recognize what I have for myself this year. And to tie that in, just thinking, you know, there's this a beautiful tefillah that was found in 1944 in Bergen-Belsen. I didn't include it here, but where folks did not have the ability to eat matzah and live. And the prayer, which you can Google easily and find, says, Father in heaven, is revealed before you our will to do your will, to celebrate Pesach by eating matzah and by abstaining from eating chametz. But alas, our hearts are filled with anguish, for our servitude prevents us, and we're in mortal danger, and therefore we're choosing to v'chai by him, to live by the mitzvot and not die by him, and also to obey your warnings. And so we eat this chametz, but we desire to eat the matzah, and we can recognize that when we say halach ma'anya. We recognize that we want guests, we want that, but this year we can't have it. And let me conclude in the final minute with some beautiful questions to think about. As we recognize that this year is different, halach ma'anya can still come alive in a totally different way at your Seder. And I pulled this from this beautiful document that's put together. You can see all the names of the contributors, different Pesach ideas for the solo Seder. It's been going around the internet. And for the Kol Dichvin paragraph, who would you want to invite to your Seder this year? You know, this year you get a choice to who you want to invite. It's not just the people that have to come. How can you invite their qualities instead of their persons to join you at the Seder? What are stories of theirs that you want to remember? And so that's my 30-second to go timer. And I just want to end there, the recognition that number one, we feel that there is a loss. It's different this year. We're alone. Number two, we recognize that we haven't achieved the full Geula. And when we say halachmanya, we're actually speaking to ourselves. We are the hungry ones. And number three, we're circling the Seder plate and recognizing and our own blessings and recognition that we might not have those blessings every year, and thinking of others that this year do not. But number four, recognizing that we can still desire to do the mitzvah of inviting guests in. And what could that look like differently this year? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Rav Uri, for those beautiful words. We're going to turn it over to Rabbi Antim, who's going to give us a session entitled Conducting a Seder for Just Your Household.
Okay, I'm going to attempt to share my screen. I think it's up there. Okay, is my screen up there?
Yep,
okay.
You're good.
Excellent. Well, but now I see a bunch of faces on my screen, so I'm going to move them over to the side here. Okay. So, Rav Uri, that was so beautiful. First of all, amazing to hear some of the halachic material for the first two 10-minute sessions, and then to hear from Rav Uri about having your Seder with a small group or with a family. The question I want to address is a very, very painful one for this year. It's one thing when you're with your family. Obviously, there are a number of elements of sadness in not being with a larger group, with not being at a group Seder. But the truth matters for me and for my family, for our nuclear family, there are also elements of excitement of being able to do it just with your kids, maybe not as much pressure in terms of the big meal and all that. But one question that I've gotten over and over again, and I know all the rabbis on this call have gotten this question, is worries about what does it mean to have your Seder alone, completely by yourself. Singles of all ages, or just people who are in quarantine, or whatever it might be. People, the idea of having the Seder alone is such a difficult and challenging idea. Something we always say, nobody should have a Seder alone, and every community does everything they can to make sure that people are invited to the Seder. And now this year we're being told we can't invite people. Even single people are not being invited to Seders or not going to Starim. And consequently, so many people are going to be having Seders alone. And when I started contemplating this idea, the first text that jumped into my mind was one that I've taught many times. It's right there, source number 1, the Rambam, Maimonides, where the Rambam is laying out for us the whole give and take, sheila u'tshuva aspect of the Seder. The Seder is the mitzvah of Vaad to levincha, telling over your children. It's defined derech sheila u'tshuva. You're supposed to have questions and answers. And the Rambam goes through, based on the Gemara, that says you're supposed to do shinuyim. You're supposed to do really weird things on the night of the Seder in order to provoke the questions. The Rambam says in the second line there, "Ketzad mishana." Oh, I could even highlight it. How are you supposed to make changes? Mechalik lehem klayos v'agozim. You give out candies and nuts. The okrin hashochan lofneim. You should pull the table away before them. I'll talk about that in a second. Before you eat, and then they start asking questions. Ein lo ben, but what if there are no children to ask the question? Then ishto sho'alto, then the wife asks. The Rambam, medieval time, is of course assuming that the man is leading the Seder. Obviously that's not true today, but basically it's saying if there are no children, then one spouse will ask the other spouse, assuming that there's a couple there. Ein lo isha, let's say you're by yourself, you're not with the spouse, and they're assuming that you have maybe chavrusa or friends at the Seder, sholem zeh Man Astana, that they would ask each other. And here's the line that I really want to focus on. Haya levado. What if the person is by him or herself? Shoel la'atzmo. You ask yourself, Man Astana halayla zeh, how is tonight different? And so basically what it's saying is, even if somebody is alone, don't just read the Seder, but rather what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to actually ask one person to the next. Almost like you have two chairs, you ask the question, and then you answer the question. And I used to read this, and it was a little humorous for me to read this, like, what does that mean? And if I would really try to think about it or contemplate it, maybe I would think about Natan Sharansky and the Gulag, I would think about different extreme examples. And then all of a sudden, this year, we have a situation where thousands and thousands of people are in this situation of the Rambam, of being livado, of being alone on Pesach, and the idea of them asking themselves the Man Astana. So I thought it was so interesting that there's actually a text that actually speaks to the situation that many people are going to be living this year, perhaps for the first time in their life. And I decided, I have to dig a little deeper into this. And because of Sefaria, those of you who don't know Sefaria, it's an amazing resource. Sefaria has much of rabbinic literature online. I was able to find this source number 2, the Kimcha Daf Shuna on Pesach. It was written by Rabbi Yochanan of Treves from Italy in the 16th century. And it's a fascinating work. It's a commentary on the Haggadah, on the Seder, on many different things. But basically, Rabbi Yochanan of Treves was trying to speak to his generation, Italian Jews of the time. Now, what was the situation with Italian Jews in the 1500s? We know, and some of this is conjecture. I came across the text and I connected it with some of my earlier research that I've done on the Spanish expulsion and the conversos. We know that after 1492, a lot of Jews who left Spain, first of all, a lot of them went to Portugal, but then in like the 1520s, they were expelled from Portugal. Many of them actually ended up in Italy. And many of the She'elot U'Tshuvot, the responsive literature that comes from conversos or former conversos who now had run away, they ran to Italy. And many of them actually left their families behind. Let's say there would be a couple and one spouse would want to remain Christian in Spain and the other one would go. And you had all of these, and this is just historically true, you had single people or very small families or families that were broken up, where all of a sudden in Italy in the 1500s, and now they have to celebrate Seder. And more than that, because a lot of them had been conversos or had not grown up learning Judaism and Hebrew, many of them couldn't read the Hebrew. So this particular source, Rabbi Yochanan of Treves, he tries to help the people of his generation deal with the Seder. How are they going to do it? They're not, a lot of them are illiterate, and many of them have families that are broken up, and how are they going to do the Seder? I'm going to get to source number 2 in a second, but just one fascinating thing about his text, he starts the Magid, his introduction to Magid is the following question. This question is, why do we not make a bracha on the Haggadah? We make a bracha on every mitzvah. There's a mitzvah, you got to levincha, tell over the story to your children on this night. Why don't we make a bracha on Magid? And he gives 2 answers. One answer is because the minimal requirement of Magid, you fulfill already when you make Kiddush. When you say Zecher Litzias Mitzrayim, you're done. A second answer given by the Rashba is it's a mitzvah she'ein la kitzvah. It has no set amount. As soon as you say, Hashem took us out of Egypt, you fulfilled your mitzvah. So since it's such a minimal mitzvah, there's no bracha. And I thought that was so important. And what he was doing was trying to encourage his people, hey, I know you can't read Hebrew, maybe your families are broken up, it's a challenging time period. There's a minimal requirement. I think he was trying to make them feel good about that. Trying to make them understand, yeah, of course, the more we do, the better. But sometimes it's a year of what's the minimal requirement. He goes on to say, why is Magid called Magid? Most people interpret the word Magid from Vaad to Levincha, telling over your children. But he realized, oh my gosh, what about people who don't have kids? What about people who are having solo Seders alone? What are they going to do? How are they going to understand that concept? He says, no, that's not what Magid means. Magid is not about Vaad to Levincha, telling your children. Magid is about Miloshan Agadah, the parts of the Talmud that are the spiritual, that are Moshe Levavos, that draw your heart. And just as the Jewish people in Mitzrayim were going through difficult things and Hashem took it out, we can be inspired, and in that merit, Hashem will save us from this difficult thing. It's amazing. What he was talking about in the 1500s, his ideas actually relate to what's going on for us. So now what does he say before the Man Astana? Look in source number 2. Man Astana halayl hazeh. These are shocking words. Zeh nitkan b'shvil mi she'ein lo ben. The whole Man Astana is only there for someone who doesn't have children, Seder, for someone who is alone at the Seder, someone who doesn't have to ask. And this is actually based on the Gemara source number 3. I don't have time to go through it in depth, but basically the Gemara says, why is it that we are oker hashulchan? Nowadays, we're all sitting at a big table. But in the olden days, they would sit on couches and they would have these like little TV tables, basically, something like that. And then what they would do is they would do kaddish orchatz karpas yachatz. And then when they're about to eat, what would they do? Someone would come in and they would remove the table. So the Gemara has a story here with Abaya and Rava. This is in source number 3, where Abaya and Rava, where Abaya was sitting, they pulled away the table. Abaya said to Rava, we haven't even eaten yet. Why are you pulling away the table? And Rava says back, you've exempted us from doing the Man Astana. You've already asked the question, meaning we've done something weird, and now you don't have to do the Man Astana. In other words, the whole point of the Man Astana, it's not the lechatchila. It's not the ideal thing. It's only if you couldn't provoke the questions. So what then is the purpose of the Man Astana? According to Rabbi Yochanan of Treves, in the 16th century, it's precisely for this moment. So the Man Astana, which we've been thinking about for all these years as this beautiful moment with kids and children and grandparents and parents and all this stuff, and do it in Yiddish and English and 25 different languages, wrong. That when you have that kind of Seder, you're supposed to do weird things to provoke questions. The whole Man Astana, according to Rabbi Yochanan of Treves, was instituted for this year, 2020, with what we're going through. Situations where people are alone, it's a text for how people can still engage and she'elot u'tshuvot. And so my basic point here with all these sources is just to show you that this idea was thought about in the sources before. It was there before. We actually do have text for it. On a practical level, we really have to think, those of us who are alone, as challenging as it is, of ways of bringing family, of bringing friends, of bringing others into the Seder, and really trying to use the Seder to understand others, also understands ourselves a little more. I really encourage people to look at that document that Rabbi Cooper just put up on the screen that Ravuri mentioned, the solo Seder. Rabbi Fruchter was very involved in that. It's an excellent document giving practical suggestions for those people who are going to have the Seder alone, or even in small situations, how they'll do it. I'm going to put the source sheet also into the chat box, so anyone who wants to take a look at it afterwards can spend more time on it. Thank you. Chag Kosher v'Sameach to everyone.
Okay, I'm the last to go. So I'm going to share my screen. I also just posted a link to what I'm going to be speaking about in the chat window. Let me just pull it up. Okay. Okay, so just see. Okay, so on a slightly lighter note, we're going to talk a little bit about making the most of technology before and on Pesach. And I just want to say before we start that I think that these questions relating to technology, relating to how to use technology, how to make the most of our technology, how to really capitalize on all the tools that we have available to us. I think these questions are just as important to us right now as the halachic questions, because I think without being able to connect, which is really, this is the way we can connect right now, relying on technology, without being able to do this, we run the risk of feeling very isolated. And I think it's very important that everybody really try their best to familiarize themselves with all the different technologies. And of course, it's difficult. Some of us aren't as good with technology. I definitely want to make myself available to anybody who has any questions. I put my email at the top of this, and I'll leave my email in the chat. Please, no matter where you're from, what shul you're from, please just feel free to reach out to me and ask me any halachic or technological questions that you have. So I just want to very briefly cover 3 areas of technology in Pesach that I think are really, really crucial. Singing, learning, and connecting. So the first, singing. So I just want to, within each of these areas, I'm going to give a few technological tips and a few sort of halachic tidbits. So in terms of singing, a lot of people, I'm sure, have seen a lot of different singing things going on Zoom over the last few weeks. So my strong recommendation is that singing does not really work well on Zoom. Unfortunately, it's one of the things that we're really deprived of during this time of social distancing, is the ability to sing together. It just doesn't work. If I were to unmute everybody right now and we were all to sing a song, it just wouldn't sound good, and it wouldn't feel like the same type of experience. What we can do instead, and I'm seeing somebody's writing something in the chat window. Okay, yeah. What we can do instead is we can actually share sound on Zoom, and I'm happy to show anybody how to do this. You could also just Google how to share computer sound, which means that if you play a song on your computer, everybody can hear it as loudly as you hear it on your own computer. Which actually creates a very uplifting experience for everybody to be listening to the same music at the same time. Another thing you can do, which I've seen a lot of shuls doing, and a lot of families can do this also, is if you have a large gathering of people and you have music playing, you can actually right-click people's pictures and do spotlight on them, which creates sort of like a jumbotron, like at a sports stadium kind of feel. And it creates a very welcoming and inviting atmosphere when you're able to jump from person to person, showing how they're engaging with what's going on. A few different ideas of things you could do specifically in your own families or in whatever situation you find yourselves regarding singing. One thing is recording. Maybe you can record your family singing your favorite Haggadah tunes and post it on Facebook Live, or post it on YouTube, or post it in any place and share it with your family. One thing you can also do is create playlists on YouTube, or create a long list of songs that are really important to you and your family that you could share with everybody. One other feature that I think is very important once Pesach starts is Hallel. Hallel is one of the most beautiful pieces of Pesach. We get to come together. Unfortunately, this year we won't be able to do that with a minyan, but I think there's a lot of amazing opportunities to do that over Zoom. Everybody can say their own bracha and make their own Hallel personally. And while you can't sing together, you can either have one person presenting to everybody, singing to everybody. And I really do think this is a time to embrace the notion of frontal singing, of one person singing who is gifted and talented, who has a beautiful voice, who's able to share their music and share their talents with the world. While sometimes we might say that communal singing is better, I think this is really a time, if we're going to have Hallel, for instance, to have somebody who's got a beautiful voice and a beautiful song, singing ability to sing frontally for everybody and for people to be inspired by that. Let's move on to learning. So when it comes to Zoom and learning, there's obviously a lot of many different opportunities that we have available to ourselves. There's a few tips. There should always be somebody that's a host in a Zoom meeting, always. For instance, right now, everybody is muted. That doesn't mean that we don't want to hear what you have to say. Of course, we want to hear what you have to say. We value your thoughts, but just for the sake of keeping decorum, it's very important that whenever you're doing any kind of learning in Zoom, that somebody is the host and somebody is managing what's going on with muting and unmuting people. And to that end, and we've seen this going on this evening already, it's really take advantage of the tools in front of you on Zoom to chat a question. If you're muted and you're not unmuted, then definitely use the chat window. Somebody asked, what is the stance on Zooming over Yom Tov? Okay, so I know that's definitely a question everybody's thinking about. It's not something that I can really cover in 10 minutes. What I'll say is a lot of the poskim have come out speaking about this as a pikuach nefesh as the guiding principle. If you're worried that somebody on the other end is isolated and they have and you're really concerned about their well-being, their psychological and physical well-being, that they're going to be isolated without having any social contact with anybody over a 3-day yontiv, or even not for 3 days, even if it's just 1 day, that opens up a number of halachic windows in order to have different heterim, different leniencies for that situation, because of course pikuach nefesh doche et hakol. Different poskim have suggested different approaches for what to do, whether it's you can use Zoom or you should make a phone call, but definitely if you're worried about somebody's life because they're not going to be in contact with you over Pesach, then we must use technology to save their life over the course of Yantiv. In terms of Pesach, I would recommend that you ask your local Orthodox rabbi. A few ideas when it comes to learning. So Sefaria, Rabbi Anti mentioned Sefaria. Sefaria is a really important tool. You could also make Sefaria source sheets. So, for instance, you could collect a number of different ideas relating to the Haggadah or a number of different Torah ideas relating to Pesach, make a source sheet on Sefaria, and then you have a link to that source sheet and you could send it to your whole family and they could print it out before Pesach begins. Again, if you don't know how to do any of these things that I'm talking about, definitely feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to answer anybody's questions about how to do these specific ideas that I'm proposing. Another idea, I'm sure we're all used to having children at our Sedarim who bring, artwork or things that they've worked on in school. And maybe this year they've had a chance to do some of that at home, and you could take pictures or scan some of those things or put it into a Google Doc and share it with your whole family so that you won't be deprived of being able to see some of the beautiful artwork that everybody in your family is working on. A quick note about Zoom Siyum Bechorim. So the Siyum Bechorim, the Siyum that we do so that the firstborns do not have to fast on Pesach. So one thing I just want to say, and I don't have time to read the source inside, but Rav Yosef Eliyahu Henkin and a few other modern poskim, from our day, have suggested that maybe this year we don't even need to do a siyum. So this doesn't even relate as much to technology. This relates more to just, do we even need to do a siyum this year? Some people say it's a total custom to even fast to begin with. And the best thing that we could do this year is to give tzedakah instead of instead of fasting or instead of even doing a siyum. Again, I'll leave that to your local Orthodox rabbi, but if you ask my personal opinion, I would, if you cannot find a Zoom siyum, and we'll talk in a second about if that's permissible, which I think it is, but if you cannot find a Zoom siyum, then I think it's totally permissible to give tzedakah this year instead of fasting or instead of attending a siyum. But if you can find a siyum on Zoom, this is one of the ways that technology really can help us. You can definitely attend a siyum on Zoom. I think almost unanimously, most of the poskim say that it's really okay to attend a siyum on Zoom. I think it's a little bit more up for debate in terms of Kaddish, if you can say Kaddish in the Kaddish that is said after the siyum or not. I think there are many poskim who would say you cannot say the actual Kaddish, but you still can have a siyum and have a sudas mitzvah following it, so that you won't have to fast for the siyum before. So that's yet another way that Zoom can be helpful to us. Finally, connecting. So in terms of connecting, I think, like I said earlier, the guiding principle here should be pikuach nefesh, both before Yontiv and on Yontiv. I think that we need to be over communicating right now with all of the people in our lives. We should communicate succinctly so we don't flood people's inboxes or all their text messages. But I think this is a time to really, since we're not seeing each other in person, we need to, I copied this piece from Pirkei Avot here, which hopefully you can see on my screen. It says, so I actually want to, say that maybe that's not the case this year, that we shouldn't emor me'at ve'aser, but we should actually say a lot. And we should also be mekabel kol hadam b'sever panim yafot. We should be treating each other lovingly and respectfully through all of our digital communication. I think it's very easy sometimes over Zoom or over text message or over email to forget about the actual person that's sitting on the other side of the screen. So I encourage all of us as we continue on through our virtual opportunities to connect with one another, that we find ways to do so lovingly, and we do so in a warm and happy way. Finally, just some final ideas about how to connect with one another using some technology. We could definitely do things like a Zoom model Seder or Man Astana before Pesach begins. One idea that I had was bedikat chametz together on Zoom. Each family can make their own bracha, but you could sort of FaceTime or Zoom somebody in to your bedikat chametz, so you're all doing it together as a family. And one idea also to form some connection amongst people is just a pre-Pesach meditation. And I think actually Zoom would work really well for that, because unlike singing, where you'll hear a lot of feedback and it might be difficult to sing together, actually quiet, a time to contemplate and be introspective and to meditate, it can be done very easily over Zoom. So again, there's so much that technology can do for us during this challenging time. And I'm more than happy to answer any questions after this session is over from people about how to use technology to our benefit during this time. I'm going to pass it over to Rabbi Antin, who will wrap us up.
Thank you, Rabbi Cooper. First of all, special yasher koach to Rabbi Cooper, who really organized all the technology for tonight and made it work in a really beautiful and seamless way. Thank you to Rabbi Cooper, and also for your beautiful words about technology and halacha. We heard beautiful words from Rabbi Hertzfeld and Maharat Friedman, halacha, about how to prepare for Pesach. That was so instructive. And then from Rav Uri and myself, all about the Seder itself. It's been so wonderful gathering with all of you. I have so much gratitude to my fellow members of the Beltway Vaad. Wishing everybody a Chag, Kasher, v'Sameach, but not only Sameach, not only full of Simcha, also full of Briyut, also full of health, as we continue to pray for everyone who needs a Refuah Shalema. I want to wish everybody a good night. Thank you.
Rav Nissen, can we just clarify that some people missed some of the parts of it? So Rav Eitan is going to send around the link that people can watch this if they missed it.
It was also on Facebook Live. So if you go onto Facebook, you'll be able to see the whole recording, but I definitely we could distribute, we'll send it out. Each shul can send out the recording also.
All right, so you'll send that to us, and then if anybody missed parts of it, you can watch it again. Shkoyach, everyone.